Hi, I'm Jeff Lancashire for Build TV. As every builder knows, the housing industry is diversifying in some exciting and potentially profitable ways. One of those maturing markets is urban infill. Even more specifically, revitalization projects that recover and restore neighborhoods to prominence and vitality. Now, these projects aren't easy, and the rules and costs are getting more sophisticated every day. But they do present a growing opportunity for builders tired of suburban planning models and the competition that comes with it. For this segment of Build TV, we've invited one of the nation's leading urban infill experts to help us navigate the waters. We have here Bob Youngentub of EYA, which has a 15-year track record of reviving neighborhoods in the Washington, D.C. area. Welcome, Bob.
Thanks, Jeff. It's great to be here.
Now, can you tell us what is the key difference between urban infill and suburban community planning and housing?
Sure. I think the major difference is in a suburban setting, you really have a blank slate and you can really create anything you want. In an urban setting, the constraints that are there, the size of the sites, the existing environment, it's so much more limiting, but at the same time, providing you a guidance as to what you can do in an urban setting.
Well, what about the entitlement process?
The entitlement process is incredibly complex, I think, both in suburban and urban settings, but typically in the urban environment, you have already built-in neighbors, you have people who are living close to the sites who really take a very strong interest in how their neighborhood becomes developed. Even in a revitalization situation where they want development to come happen, the scrutiny and the intensity with which they go through the process is very different, I think, than what happens typically in a suburban setting.
So it's still worth it, though, right?
Worth the process in an urban environment? There's no doubt. I think, not only when you see kind of what's happened in the market today, demographically over the past 10 years, the makeup of the family has changed. People are really looking for more urban amenities. They want the ability to walk to restaurants, to live close in, to walk to work, to get rid of these long commutes. And from a competitive standpoint, once you go through that entitlement process, you really do, in many cases, have the market to yourself and can really kind of set and establish prices and maintain absorption even when the market softens.
EYA has built more than 30 urban infill projects representing about 2,500 homes. But let's focus on one of them, Bryan Square, as an example of a success story.
The whole acquisition process for urban infill sites is something where you really have to be creative. You're looking at all different types of sources of land. In this particular case, this was an abandoned school property that was owned by D.C. Public Schools. We went through an RFP process, were successful in winning the RFP with D.C. Public Schools, and were able to acquire the site. And it was about a 2.5-acre site that had an old school building on the property that was deemed historic. We actually had to keep the historic school building in place as we built on the rest of the land around the school.
It's a beautiful project. What did you do architecturally?
Because of where it was situated, the architecture really became the defining element of the project. It has two street frontages, one on South Carolina Avenue and one on Independence Avenue. And the Independence Avenue has a very distinct Victorian architectural row home historic presence. And on South Carolina, you really see a very strong presence of kind of classic D.C. front porch row homes. And so working with the D.C. Planning Office, we came up with three distinct architectural styles, one that reflected the historic environment of Independence, one for South Carolina, and then on the interior of the site, we actually created an architecture that reflected the style and the character of the old school building.
Developing that kind of diversity is probably both challenging and satisfying.
It's incredibly satisfying. I think everybody who works with the EYA team takes a lot of satisfaction and enjoyment out of the uniqueness of these projects. It's not cookie-cutter construction, so even the guys who are building and implementing the plans in the field, I think, really take great pride in what they're building because they're not doing the same thing every single time. At the same point, it's very complicated because every set of plans is brand new. It's a challenge. You don't have the economies or efficiencies of scale when you're building the same product over and over again. So there are pros and cons to it, but it is incredibly satisfying from the development standpoint.
So what's next for EYA and for the urban infill trend?
As far as a trend, I think it's less a trend now than actually a way of life. So I think we're kind of moving past this area where people said, hey, wouldn't it be great to live in the city? It's really, as you look out throughout the country, every major city and even some of the smaller cities are taking advantage of their urban amenities and seeing much more development and people living downtown. Our future is incredibly strong, even in the softness of today's market. We're looking out 2 and 3 years. When the market does come back, we'll have some tremendous opportunities that are teed up and ready to go for sales.
Thanks for that glimpse into the urban infill side of the home building business.
Thanks. It was my pleasure.
And thanks again for watching. Tune in again next time for more ideas to build your business. For Build TV, I'm Jeff Lancashire.